This is the Park Slope Food Co-op cooking class. My name is Jeff Bonner. I'm the host. Our guest chef tonight is Chef Ronna Welsh. Ronna Welsh. And uh, Ronna is the right person to not teach you just how to cook a dish, but to teach you how to approach your refrigerator and your store and figure out the most wonderful thing you can do with what there is in front of you. And full of great tips for, again, looking at what's there and then doing something wonderful with it. So I'm really thrilled. She's our guest chef. And Rana, why don't you take it away? Oh, and by the way, she has a fantastic cookbook, The Nimble Chef, available not at the co-op right now, but certainly on Amazon and all great bookstores. And so if you want more of this, you should definitely check out her cookbook.
And the cookbook is linked in the notes under class information.
Great. And I'll put the link back in the chat as well. We ask that you participate a lot. Put with any questions or comments or thoughts you have, please put them in the chat. Mute your microphone, put them in the chat, and I'll make sure that we're answering things that go in the chat and that we give Rana a chance to answer things. So with that, Rana, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Hi, everybody. Today's recipe is a dish that can only happen this time of year. And by this time of year in the Northeast, we're talking spring. But once the spring hits the Northeast of the United States, spring has pretty much hit everywhere. So I'm going to show you how to make ricotta dumpling in a spring stock. The stock itself is something that you can use for a host of other different kinds of spring soups, hot or cold. So great for cucumber soup, for example. I'll go through the stock with you, show you how to make the dumplings, give you an option if you don't feel like making the dumplings, what to do instead, and then show you how to use a host of vegetables that are at every market right now. So I'm going to show you the ones that are from the food co-op that I got, and this is what we're going to be working with today. So here there are a bunch of different herbs. This is thyme, parsley. These are actually small little microgreens, so they're assorted pea and radish greens. Over here is fennel and fennel fronds. These are chives. And then here, these are actually the leaves from little white turnips. I have some garlic, asparagus hidden under here. And then these are fava beans. So these are huge fava beans. And these are out for a hot minute this time of year. So we're going to use all of these vegetables in the soup. The great thing about this soup is you can actually have as little or as much of the broth as you want because it's mostly about the vegetables, and if you're using them, about the dumplings. The other thing about the soup is the broth itself takes 2 minutes-ish to make, almost from start to finish, so maybe 5 or so. And the vegetables cook while the broth is off. So basically, they are just not raw. All the vegetables maintain their freshness and their distinctive flavor, even if they're in the same pot. I'm going to show you first each of these components of the soup and then how quick it is to bring it all together at the end. The first thing is going to be this ricotta custard that goes into your dumplings. For those of you who are cooking along, there was a little note at the top of the recipe saying you had to make the custard first in advance. And the reason for that is that it needs to set. So it's something that we mix together and then goes into the oven, sets for a few hours. I'm going to show you how it comes together because it's pretty quick. If it's something you wanted to do, it's great not just for this recipe for the dumplings, but it's also great to have in general just on sandwiches to eat as a snack. So for the dumplings, this is what we have. Ricotta, right? So this is super creamy ricotta. And the thing about ricotta, and the reason that I want to cook it and not just spoon some into the dumpling itself, is that it will weep right out. So typically, let's say if you make ricotta ravioli, you might mix the ricotta with an egg, and that will help give it shape. But we're not going to be cooking the dumpling that long in order for the ricotta to set in that amount of time. So, am I looking right here? Okay. So, this is sort of a trick. We're going to take this ricotta, dump it all out. Right? It's really creamy. Use really good ricotta if you can find it. It's actually hard to find, I think. And then once we have the ricotta, we're going to crack in an egg. Move that out of the way. So we just have the ricotta, the egg, and then I have some pecorino. You can use whatever hard cheese. I've actually used an aged Gouda before in this, which is really nice. And then I like to put in a little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of salt. This depends on how salty your cheese is. And then some pepper. So that's how quickly this all comes together. And you just want to mix it up. So you're just going to basically beat the egg. I try not to use a separate bowl to beat it because I'd rather not dirty a separate bowl. Bring it all together. Yeah.
So the question was, the ricotta is much thicker than what you would see typically in the grocery store. Is there something special about the one that you bought?
It's a brand that I like that happens to be just from a dairy somewhat nearby in Rhode Island. No, it may be strained. It may be the way that they make it. A lot of ricotta is looser, and the benefit of this custard and cooking it with the egg is that you firm it up. So if you buy a ricotta that has a lot of extra water or whey dripping out of it, you can just discard that whey, but you don't have to strain it, which you might typically do if you're going to use the ricotta as a stuffing, let's say. So adding the egg, no matter the consistency of your ricotta, will firm it up just by baking it in a water bath, kind of like a cheesecake. So once I have this down and I've seasoned it and I've tasted it, I want to put it into a mold. And honestly, I've baked this ricotta custard in so many different shapes, so many different molds. It doesn't matter. It affects the time ultimately. So the deeper the pan, the longer it takes to bake. But it doesn't affect the texture. So I like to put it into a pan whose shape I'll want in the end. This one is just lined with parchment paper, which makes it easy to take out. Something that you might do if you're, making brownies or something like that.
So you're cooking it in that mold, but it's going to end up in dumplings?
So this custard we're doing first. Some of it is going to end up in the dumplings that goes into the soup.
Okay.
And then you'll have extra to just enjoy. The best thing is that ricotta, which normally won't keep for all that long in your refrigerator, will keep for 2 or 3 times as long after you have baked it. So this is the process of assembling it. And again, you don't have to make the dumplings. You can just have the ricotta fresh. And at the end, I'll show you what to do with the fresh ricotta if you decide not to do the dumplings at all. But this is the way it goes if you're going to bake it. And what you would do is put it into another pan like this. You'd pour hot water. So if you have ever made a cheesecake, same process. Put hot water at least halfway up. Cover it with foil. It goes in the oven, and depends on, again, how thick the pan is. If the pan is pretty thick, 45 minutes to an hour. If the pan is much thinner, talking about closer to 35, 40 minutes. I have a recipe for this, and so you can actually follow the exact specific instructions. But just to let you know that the science behind this is just that the egg makes the cheese set to whatever shape you give it. And here's what it looks like. So this goes in the oven. I take it out, I let it cool, and then I pop it out the next day. And this is the cheese, right? So it's actually something that went from really spoonable to sliceable, right? So this is something that I could potentially put on a sandwich, but it's also sturdy and thick enough that I can put it into my dumpling for the soup, or if you wanted to make, ravioli or manicotti or just have it on a sandwich, it's ready to go. The other thing is it's not only got great texture right now, but it's also got great flavor because I seasoned it to exactly the way I wanted. Sometimes ricotta can be a little bit lackluster, especially if you can't find ricotta that was just, made by a farm 2 miles away. So this is a great way to put it, kind of whip it into shape. This is the ricotta custard. So if you're going to use the custard to make the dumplings, you have that all set. Again, if you're not, I'll show you what to do with ricotta that you just spoon out of the jar. And then once the custard is done, then we're going to go ahead and make the stock. This is a spring stock that is so different from any other vegetable stock because it's made with only spring ingredients. So it's a vegetable stock that doesn't have, potato in it. It doesn't have carrot in it. It doesn't have long simmering sort of deadening heavy vegetables. When I think of vegetable stock, and if you buy vegetable stock in a box, it pours out and it's usually either like tinted a little bit yellow or tinted a little bit orange, and it tastes mostly of the box. So good vegetable stock for the season should reflect the vegetables that went into it, which should always be the ones currently growing. And the other thing about this stock is it's quick to make, it's fresh, it's easy, and it uses scraps of whatever spring vegetables you have around, the exception being asparagus, which to my taste has too much of like an overpowering aroma to be good for this stock. So for this spring stock, this is what I have. Basically, the things that were on that tray. This is fennel, and I'm using the fronds, I'm using the green stalk, I'm using the core of the fennel and those outer leaves that maybe were a little bit discolored. So they're all going to go in to my food processor, right? So not into the pot at this point.
Just so I'm clear, Ronna, you're saying with a few exceptions like asparagus, you can use whatever vegetables you're attracted to.
Whatever green vegetables.
Green vegetables. Okay.
Right? You
Great.
don't want something that is too bitter. So I wouldn't put a turnip in. Anything that you would be interested in eating raw that's green and herbal, I would say is fair game.
Excellent.
So this is fennel. And then celery. So I'm using the part of the celery, the end that you chopped off for egg salad, the tops that you chopped off, the yellow leaves, not the green ones because they tend to be a little bitter. So in goes the celery. This is just about 1/4 of an onion, everything really roughly chopped. And then this is parsley, stems and greens. So if I just had stems, I would just put the stems in. And then lastly, I have this lemon zest. Now, typically what I would do is I would just take my vegetable peeler and peel off a long strip from the lemon. But my lemon actually got squashed under a bus on the way here. So instead I pulled out, I have a container that I'll find somewhere. I actually have a container of lemon zest I keep on hand. So if I have lemons and I have a moment and I think of it, I'm about to juice it, I'll stop, zest it into my lemon zest bowl, which hangs out in my refrigerator before juicing it and moving on. So luckily I had some zest. So putting that also in the food processor. I have some garlic here. I'm going to wait on the garlic and I'll show you why. So all I do is process this to small pieces. So you can see, right? And like, if you smell it, it's incredible. And then I'm going to put it in this pot of water. So this is cold water. This is 6 cups of cold water. So like other stocks, you start in cold water, but you know, why cut it so small? What's the point? The point is that I want everything about this stock to be really, really fresh and bright. And if I cook it for long, I'll deaden all of that. So, you know, like think about if you have asparagus and you cook it for too long, you know, it kind of goes army green and doesn't taste as fresh. So we don't want to cook this beyond that point. And if I want this to be a short cooking stock, I have to cut my vegetables really small to get every last bit of flavor out of them. So the only way this can be quick cooking is that all of my vegetables are super small. And then what I'm going to do is turn the heat on. Ooh, turn the heat on. While it's heating up, I'm also going to add a couple of tablespoons of white wine vinegar. This adds a little bit of acidity. Of course, it adds a little bit of structure to this. I don't like lemon because lemon is going to overpower the vegetables. There is that little bit of zest. And if you're wondering why I'm pouring 4 in, it's because this is a half tablespoon. You don't see them very often, but there's my vintage tablespoon. So this is going to heat up, and what I'm looking for, and the light actually helps this. So it's nice. You have this bright green, and the second that I see on the outer edge, which is what's hottest first, the second I see that those pieces begin to turn a dull green, I turn the heat off. Okay, so this is going to take just, you know, a matter of minutes to come to that point. And again, I'm not even looking for a simmer. I'm looking for, you know, think about people who are really careful about the way that they make tea. If you bring the water for tea to a boil, then you'll extract the wrong flavors from the tea leaves, and something similar is going on here. So we've got our vinegar, our vegetables, our water. This is a really easy recipe to make 2-3 times. And what I have for in this batch might even be more than I need for this soup, but it can freeze. And it looks like this when it's done. So you can see it has like this really beautiful greenish color, right? This is after it's been strained. I'll show you the whole process. So all of the flavor from these tiny little bits is now, you know, in this broth. And then what I want to show you is how to put those ricotta dumplings together if that's something you decide to do. Let me get this out of the way. Oh, and this garlic, which is going, going to go into the stock. I'm going to just chop roughly, and then that's going to go in at the end and just sit into the broth, sit in the hot broth and infuse until the broth is completely cooled down. So I'll have these in reserve for when I'm ready to take the stock off.
Yeah. And Ronna,
Okay.
just to make sure, typically when I make a soup broth, I throw a bunch of vegetables in and let it cook for a long time, turnips and
Yeah,
and this is not that. So
no, because nobody wants to be cooking hot stock right now, at least in this room, in this city, right? So this is a way to not only make soup possible and appealing this time of year, but it's the only way to cook these vegetables so that the broth remains fresh and vibrant.
great.
And what you want is you want a broth in the end that complements the vegetables in it. You don't want something that just fills the space in between. So this broth actually will feel like an essence or an extension of the vegetables with a little bit more to it, because you'll see as we build the soup, we'll add some other flavors. All right. I'm going to bring over my dumpling setup.
When do you want to
And I'm keeping an eye on my broth. Okay. And you can see, William, if you want to put your camera in here, I can almost hear what's happening more than I can see. So there's tiny little bubbles, the equivalent of if you've ever scalded milk, you know, you're looking for those tiny little bubbles around the edge. There's tiny little bubbles forming here, and it's almost there. So basically what I want is to see a little bit of movement, to see that the water is agitating the vegetables, but it's going to be maybe another 15 seconds or so, and then we'll whisk it away. So again, what we want is for the hot water to pull out, for the vegetables to leach into the water, give off all of their flavor, but not go past that point to where they feel somewhat tired.
So this is like a really gentle but pretty fast process.
It's gentle, it's pretty fast, but it's actually pretty, it gives you a really lovely, strong broth. So again, giving that a couple more minutes. We've got our garlic ready. I thought it would be 45 seconds, I lied. All right, I'm going to just set up my dumplings in the meantime. Oh yeah, this will be for the stock, so I'll move that in a sec. These are wonton wrappers. You can use dumpling wrappers, wonton wrappers, but basically any shape you want. I like to use these square ones because I like the way they stand up in the bowl when I'm done. So I'll just take a few of them out.
And just for reference to everybody, all the ingredients were purchased at the co-op.
Yep, all the ingredients.
So the ricotta that Ronna mentioned, the wonton wrappers.
Wonton wrappers, all the vegetables. Yep.
What's the brand of those? Can you just hold the package up? Very good. Okay.
Yep. I want to keep these in the package, the ones that I'm not using, so that they don't dry out. I'll move this out of the way. So my setup for my dumplings is really simple. It's just my cheese, a small bowl of water, and my wrappers. I'll do 6, make it even. Okay, and you see the stock, by the way? I don't know if you can see on camera. Do you see how this is dulled? And right around the edge, it's like an army green. You see right there?
A little bit.
Yeah, right at the edge, it's army green. It's still brown in the center, or bright in the center. So now I want to take it off. So I'm going to turn the stove off. and then pour it into here. So pausing on the dumplings for a second. And the yield on this stock is exactly what you put into it because there was no time, no chance for anything to evaporate. So you put 6 cups of water in, and then there's 6 cups of broth in the end.
Anything fun or interesting you can do with those blanched vegetables?
And by the way, I'm putting these pieces of garlic in, and I dirtied my water. You can taste them. I mean, if basically, like a lot of stock, the idea is that they've given everything they have over to the broth, so they taste like each other. In other words, sort of taste like nothing, maybe like the vinegar, if anything at all. There's a little bit of texture, but you've eked out every bit of value from them, and it's now in the broth. So,
Right.
yeah, there's not much to it that you could get except for something for your compost pile.
Okay, good.
Just because I don't have it set up for it here. Yeah, great question. You can and should press all of it out. I wanted to put this into this container so that you all can see the liquid, but I'll show you what you can get, just by pressing it out. And it's a fine strainer, so none of this is coming through. None of the solids are coming through.
It's a
Right? So
it's a
nice,
beautiful liquid.
Yeah, it's a nice clear broth.
And bright.
Okay, so that's it, and you can see the garlic is here. So the garlic is steeping like it's tea, and it's going to cool down with the garlic. I didn't even peel the garlic; I just roughly chopped it because it's going to eventually be strained out. So then this becomes this.
It's like spring in liquid form.
Spring in liquid form, exactly. All right, so stock is done. Back to our little dumplings. Super simple. We're just going to take some of the ricotta cheese. So some dumplings are bigger than others. You'll have to adjust, but this is about a teaspoon worth right in the center. I like to do them all at once.
You don't need to make a neat ball or anything like that. I see your.
No, you don't. And I'll show you how I'm gonna put the sides together. All right. Then what I like to do is I'll lift it in my hand, and I'll take my water just with my fingers. A brush usually makes things too wet. And brush all 4 sides. And then I'll take, you can do anything you want. So if you wanted to, you could just fold it over like a triangle. Because this is a soup, I like to make them stand up in the bowl. So I'll take the 2 corners opposite, doesn't matter which ones you start with, and put them together right at the top, right? So the water acts like glue. And then what I want to do is take my finger and push one of the corners in toward the top as well and match it up just as best I can. This gives me a chance too, because there's 2 little kind of loops here, 2 little holes where I haven't yet pressed on the seams. I'm going to start from the ricotta, pressing the air all the way out till I close the seam on each side. And then I'm going to turn, right? This is almost like shutting an envelope. Bring this up to this top, to the peak, put my hand right where the ricotta is, work the air out to the edge. And then you have a cute little standing dumpling.
Beautiful.
So the way that goes again is just paint the edges, bring together at the top, bring together on the side, pinch, take out the air, pinch, take out the air. And you really do have to play with how much ricotta makes sense. But as long as you pinch it tight at the top. What I also like is that this shape gives you, gives the vegetables room to sort of tuck in around them. So the name of the recipe is Ricotta Dumplings with spring stock and vegetables. That's mostly because I didn't really know what to call it, and the dumplings are pretty prominent, but the soup, to me, the star are really the vegetables. The dumplings you can make ahead of time. You can even make the dumplings ahead of time and freeze them. And if you decide you wanted to put them in this spring soup, you can. And if you decided you wanted to pan fry them and sprinkle them with a little bit of, salt and olive oil, you can do that too. So every component of this recipe is designed to build like a delicious bowl of soup. But each component can be used for other things. One of the ways in which I like to cook is I cook things for maybe one meal, but with other uses in mind, so that if I'm going to take time to make a ricotta custard for one specific soup, it'd be great if I had that ricotta custard left over for a few other dishes that I might not have even planned, but that would be easy to put together because it's ready for me to go. Same with these dumplings. It would be great if, I had the dumplings for the soup, but even nice for me just to have them ready to go for the next time I bring home marinara from the pork store around the corner.
Ronna, there's a question here about using Kite Hill vegan ricotta. Have you ever?
So I haven't used it myself. I imagine it would work exactly the same way. I don't know. I mean, again, a little bit of egg in this helps to stabilize the ricotta, prevent it from weeping, prevent it from getting too liquidy and possibly bursting through the dumpling. So it may be that the kite ricotta can be prepared in the same way. It may be also doesn't necessarily have to be if it's stiff enough. But the other thing is too, if these burst, so be it. It's just going to burst, and add flavor. You just don't want them because, by the way, we're cooking these in the broth. So it's not like we're ravioli where you cook it in a pot of water and then add it to your sauce. And if you lost a couple in the pot, that would be terrible. This, if it opens up in your little pot of soup, it just flavors the soup. So you don't have to be, very precious about this. These are great too. The shape is great if you just wanted to put these in with a little pesto because they have all these little pockets, And so those are our dumplings. And obviously I can make so many more with this ricotta that I have left over. But as I said, this is breakfast the next day with some grapefruit, or this is on a piece of toast with some fresh herbs or pesto, or this is putting it inside a tortilla or a crepe. So the fact that I have a lot of extra ricotta custard, to me, is only the benefit of having put any effort into it, making it at all. And then for the soup. So I'm just gonna grab a clean pot. This one is a little bit shallower, but it still is wide because I don't want the dumplings to be piled on top of one another. And I'm going to start with the stock that I made in advance, just because the one that I just made, while it's already hot and ready to go, it's still steeping with that garlic. So I have here about a couple of cups of the stock. And I'm going to turn on the heat. And what I want to add to it, remember, it has the flavors of the herbs and the vegetables that went into it. It also has a little bit of lift from the white wine vinegar. It has the garlic in it. But now I'm going to add the real flavor. So this is fresh ginger. I'm just going to, I have some grated.
Ronna, someone's asking about cooking the custard in a toaster oven, particularly in this kind of weather. I assume that would not be a problem to do that.
I mean, because a toaster oven, you can just set to a low temperature, right? As long as you can put a water bath in it, sure.
Great.
I don't see why not. All right, so this is going to be for 2 cups. We're going to do about a teaspoon of ginger. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that in my broth. I'm also going to add a little salt to it. And then I want to come back to those vegetables that were on the tray. Here I have a medley of those very things. These are, this is the asparagus. You can see I've cut it on the bias, which means on an angle, so that I have nice long pieces, but they're still pretty thin with all this cut area exposed. So that means that the asparagus will cook quicker as it seeps into this, the water seeps into the cut area. But also they'll just look really nice and elegant in the bowl itself. I have this shaved fennel. Remember, I used the fronds and I used some of the stems for the stock. And then I also have these fava beans. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about fava beans. These are the ones that came in this really big pod. So this is an enormous fava bean. And you may see these near you. They don't last long. They're delicious. They're creamy. So the way this works is you have a huge pod similar to a pea pod. And like that, you have these beans inside. You open it up, you slide them out just like that. This actually is a covering. It's like a little bit of a husk. The bean is inside this. And the way to get it open is, the easiest way is to put these in boiling water for about 30 to 45 seconds. Plunge them then in ice water, which I've done here. And then what you'll see is once it's cool, the skins just slip off.
Oh, wow, it literally
and
shot
the
out.
just pops out. Yeah. So then what I have here are just these empty skins. And you have, just gonna like use my fingernail to break 3. And you have the fava bean. So again, these are blanched. They're not cooked all the way through, just enough to get this skin off. Everything else is raw. So now that I have this broth here, the ginger is in here, I'm gonna add my vegetables. After I add my vegetables for about 30 seconds, I'm gonna add the dumplings. I'm gonna cover and let it cook. That's not all though. So here's the thing about this soup that's really nice is it's a bunch of fresh ingredients presented in all different ways. In the stock, in the crunch of the vegetables, and then herbs on top. So all of these layers become important, not just what goes into the hot broth, but what we add to the bowl afterwards. This comes to a boil. I add my vegetables just like that. I'm going to cover it. what I'm looking for is to get rid of the starchy flavor. So the vegetables are going to stay nice and bright, but I want the asparagus to taste vegetal. I want the fava beans to get creamy. I don't want anything to taste underdone. So as this is in the pot, right? Everything's slowly cooking. I'm going to let it just come back up to the boil. I just had hot stock to which I added a bunch of cold ingredients so it'll re-warm. After that, I'm going to add these dumplings to it, and then I'll show you how I finish the soup off in the bowl.
A quick question. Can you do that same blanching trick with dried fava beans to get the skin off?
You don't, in my experience, you don't need to get the skin off for dried fava beans. At least the dried fava beans that I am able to purchase can be cooked just as they are. Is that your experience too, right? Yeah.
I think when they're dried, the skins are already off. They're already
I think that as they're available to you, you just cook them like you would cook any other dried bean without any kind of preparation.
Great.
Okay, so that's why.
Oh, is the burner off?
Uh-huh.
We're having some technical
Technical
difficulties.
difference. We're gonna go over. You want to come over to my stove?
Uh-oh.
Everything works, I promise.
Yeah, why isn't it clicking? Do we need a minute?
Uh-huh. My pilot lights are out.
We're going old school.
Old school. I'm gonna embarrass myself because my matches won't be good.
Oh, there we go.
Mhm.
Ta-da, we have fire.
We rubbed two sticks together.
For people who don't know, this is Ronna's studio classroom where she teaches her cooking classes. So don't
So
feel
you would
bad.
think that all the burners would work.
Well, yeah.
No.
I was about to make a joke about, don't feel bad if you don't have 6 burners. New York.
Okay, so that's why it didn't come back to a boil. Here you go. And now I'm going to put my dumplings in. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn the heat off. And these are just going to cook in the broth. Single layer, cover it. And let it be. And then we'll get ready for plating the soup. Okay, so the vegetables are in, the dumplings are in. We're giving them about 30, 45 seconds to cook through. And what I want to add to the soup, once it's in the bowl, is some Parmesan cheese, olive oil, black pepper, and then I'm also going to add herbs to it. So these are those microgreens that I had. And then I also have some fresh thyme. And then I have parsley and some of these fennel fronds. All right. So let's grab the soup. We'll see if the dumplings have cooked through. Okay. They're actually paper thin, the dumpling wrappers. I want to give it a taste.
I can really smell it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and make sure if it needs some salt, I give it some salt. Okay, so now what I want to do is ladle it into the bowls and then finish it off.
Mm.
Come on, little guy. That one's over.
How did you decide when the vegetables were done?
They turn bright green, and if you're not sure, you would taste it and just make sure that they don't taste raw. But they're continuing to cook even if I have, as they sit here in the broth. So now, as promised, I want to take the cheese. So the cheese adds flavor, but it's also going to add body to the broth. I skimmed this one. I'm going to add a little olive oil. Flavor, also body. Pepper. And herbs. And in my opinion, other than the cheese, in case you don't eat cheese, none of these layers are optional. So this is as much a part of the flavor and the texture of the soup. I would use as many different kinds of herbs as you can. Nothing is off limits unless it's something, you know, like rosemary or something really woody.
So I see you have some thyme, some dill.
This is thyme. This is actually, these are the fennel fronds.
Oh,
And a little bit of these extra herbs. Now, there's some other things that you can put with this. So let's say you didn't want to put cheese, or maybe in addition, you could add some freshly toasted breadcrumbs. So these are actually just toasted with olive oil and salt. And the other thing is you can really finely ground nuts. So these are pistachios that you could also add to give body and thicken the broth and add some flavor to it if you wanted. And then a last word about what to do if you don't want to make the ricotta custard, but you would like to use ricotta for the soup. What I would do is I would take the custard. So here it is behind me. You want to make sure the ricotta tastes good. And sometimes our ricotta tastes bland, but what I would do is, if you can, I would season it. You can season it the way I did with salt, pepper, nutmeg, and a little bit of cheese, so pecorino or other, and just take, honestly, a nice dollop of it. If you want to, you can put it on a piece of bread and then stick that in the soup, or the dollop of ricotta with the vegetables around it and a little bit of broth. And then the ricotta will just be something that you scoop as you scoop up the broth. So if you want to avoid the dumplings altogether, that's one way to do it. Again, if you want to make the soup completely vegan, eliminate the cheese, but definitely go ahead and add some body to the broth and don't skip the ginger for certain. And that's it.
do we have any questions? Please drop them in the chat if anybody has any final questions for Ronna.
And just a reminder, if you have on hand the spring stock, if you have on hand some ricotta cheese and some vegetables, you can make this soup in 5 minutes, because all you're doing is bringing the pre-made stock to a boil, adding the vegetables that you can cut during the time the stock is heating up. And then by the time you've added your vegetables, put the lid on, grabs your soup bowl and maybe your piece of toast, it's done. So lots of different components, all can be made ahead of time, but the assembly is really quick and easy.
Okay, I think we're in good shape.
All
Thanks, everybody. Jeff, do you have any closing remarks before we sign off?
Nothing except thank you so much, Ronna. It looks wonderful. I'm really jealous I'm not there. Thank you, William and Jeffrey, for your technical work. And thank you, everyone, for your participation and your questions.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
evening, everyone.